This Dodge Intrepid was written off as junk, but today we prove everyone wrong. Most people would have crushed this car years ago. I'm about to show you why I didn't. Would you spend time fixing this car? By the end of this video, you might just change your mind. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so I got the lowering spring off the old shock, and I got the new shock here, so I just got to get it out of the box, get it disassembled, and swap the spring over. So let's do that. All right, so we got that one all finished up. Let's get it back on the car. All right, so before I mount it back up, we're gonna come in here and get this all cleaned up and get it shot with some paint so that it looks a lot nicer. Let's do that first. All right, so we're gonna get some red caliper paint on here, so let's do that. Okay, so the paint's all dry. I let it sit overnight. We're gonna get it all untaped and then start getting the suspension back on, so let's do that. All right, so we're gonna come in here, we're gonna get the strut in, and then we're gonna get the brakes and stuff all reassembled and get everything back together so that we can move on to doing the other side. So, all right, let's do that. All right, so we're ready to go back on with the tire. I got some brand new tires. There's some Summit Ultramax 215/50 R17. So let's get these on. All right, so now I just need to do that 3 more times. Okay, so the CV axle boot is torn, so it looks like I'm gonna put a new CV axle on this side. So, all right, let's get the CV axle out. All right, as you can see, that boot was definitely torn because it just pulled out of the other side. So the other end of the CV axle is still in there, so I got to pop that out. So let's get that out of there. All right, so we got the old strut here. We're gonna get disassembled and get the lowering spring transferred over. So, all right, let's take this thing apart. All right, so we're gonna come in here and get the new CV axle put in. So, all right, let's do that. All right, so we got the new strut assembly mounted up, new brake rotors, new CV axle, new brake pads, and the caliper all painted up. So let's get the wheel mounted up and then we'll move on to doing the rear. All right, before I move on to doing the rears, I gotta do it. I gotta get these stupid stick-on fender vents off of here. So, all right, let's get these off. Okay, so we got the little stick-ons off of there. Now we're soaking it with some WD-40. Went ahead and sprayed it with WD-40 first. Now I soaked this rag with it, and we're gonna let that sit on there for about 20 minutes, and then hopefully the sticky adhesive stuff will just come right off. So, all right, let's let that soak. All right, so we got it all removed, and then I wet sanded to get rid of any of the edges that were still there. So now once the car's all washed and I polish this up, you shouldn't be able to see any of that. All right, let's move on to getting the back suspension all finished up. All right, so that's one rear strut all reassembled, so let's get it back on the car. All right, so we got the caliper painted and the caliper bracket all painted up, so now it's time to get it all reassembled. So, all right, let's get this thing back together. Okay, that's the last one all put together. And now we just got to get the brake caliper and the bracket all painted up, and then we can get it back on the car. So, all right, let's get into it. All right, so I got that all painted up. I'm gonna let it dry overnight, so the next thing you see it'll be tomorrow. So, all right, we'll see you in a second. Okay, so it's the next day. We're gonna jump back into it. We're gonna get the paper and stuff all off, get the rear strut mounted back in there, and then the rear suspension and stuff all reassembled. So let's do that. Okay, we finally got all the suspension done. We got the new struts all mounted in, new brake pads put on, new brake rotors, painted up all the brake calipers, got new tires mounted up, and the wheels mounted back on the vehicle. So now we can move on to doing something else. Okay, so I was thinking about it, and since the car's been sitting for a couple of years, the engine and transmission themselves only have 86,000 miles on them, but with it sitting for a few years, I don't want to sell it without putting a brand new time belt and water pump on it. That way I can make sure that it's the one that's in there isn't going to break on the next person that gets the car. So we're going to go ahead and get this all disassembled so we can put a new time belt and water pump in. So, all right, let's do that. Okay, so I got the upper radiator core support out and the fan, so now I need to come in here and get the belts back off, and then take off the crank pulley bolt, take the harmonic balancer off, and then start pulling off the time belt cover. So, all right, let's do that. This 3-claw harmonic balancer puller for Chrysler specific. It's nice and short, so it allows you to get in there without having to take the radiator out to get the harmonic balancer off. So, all right, let's get this off. Okay, so we got the cover all off. Now you can see in here these 2 dots, and this white line right here is marking a notch in the camshaft there, or the cam sprocket. That lines up between those two dots, and same thing with this one. And then right down here at the bottom, you can see where it says TDC, and then there's a little needle, basically pin, sticking up on the back side of the crank sprocket there. That lines up. And so that's how you make sure the timing's all in. Now I just need to come in here and undo the time belt tensioner, and then take the belt off, and then put the new tensioner on, new water pump, and then put the belt back on. So, all right, let's do that. Okay, so I got all the time marks lined up. You can see the notch on the cam sprocket here is between the two dots there. Same thing over here is between the two dots here. And then down here, the TDC arrows are lined up. So we got a new water pump, tensioner, and time belt in here. So let's get it all back together. All right, so we got the time belt and water pump changed out and everything back together. Before I put the upper radiator core support on, let's get it fired up and make sure that it sounds good. So, all right, let's start it up. All right, sweet. Must got the timing perfect because it runs perfect. So before I put the upper radiator core support on here, since it's easy to get the headlights out right now, I'm going to go ahead and pull these out and put them on the workbench and start renewing them because they're kind of starting to yellow, as you can see. This one as well. So we'll get that all cleaned up so it looks nice and clear like it is up on top here. But yeah, they should look a lot better when we're all finished up. All right, let's get them out and put them on the workbench. All right, so we got them out here on the bench or whatever. As you can see, they're nice and yellow. What I'm going to use is this Mother's New lens. I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but I've used it many times and I've had pretty good luck with the lenses coming out nice and clear like they're brand new. So, all right, let's get these things renewed. All right, so it comes with the buffing pad. Comes with a couple different grits of sandpaper for renewing. This is from another one I've done, and I have another new set in here. And it comes with a little soft sponge that actually has a little bit of a texture to it. And that's the last one you use before you go into the buff. All right, so we're gonna start with the 800 grit, then move to the 1500 grit, and then the 3000 grit, and then we'll clean it all off, and then we use the buffing compound. So, all right, let's do it. All right, so my battery died there. I just went ahead and finished sanding it down with the 1500 grit. And for the 800 grit and the 1500 grit, you're supposed to keep it wet the whole time. And then when you move to the little sponge with the 3000 grit, you have to have it all dry. So let's get the table all dried off and the headlight dried off so we can get that one done. All right, so you can see it gets rid of all that yellowness that's on here, and it still has like a dull look to it, but now we're gonna move on to the buffing compound, and once we're done with that, it'll be nice and clear. So, all right, let's get this thing buffed. All right, so this is the one that I haven't done, and then this is the one that I just did. You can see a big difference. Way better looking. This angle shows it really good. You can see how clear that one is, and just how yellow and nasty that one is. All right, let's do the other one. All right, so we got them both done. Let's take a look at them. They came out really nice. Nice and clear. So let's get them back on the car. All right, so we've got the headlights done, all reinstalled. So now we're gonna move on to doing the interior. First thing is I'm gonna get the seat belts pulled out and get those pressure washed off. So, all right, let's do that. All right, so I got the seat belts all blasted out. I put a little bit of Dawn dish soap on them and then just laid it along the side of the car and pressure washed them. Now I've just got them up, draping over top of the awning so they can dry while I get the interior all cleaned up. So, all right, let's jump inside the interior. Okay, so we were able to get quite a bit done in this episode. We got all the suspension done, we renewed the headlights, and got all the interior put back in, but I hit a couple of snags. The paint lady that mixes up the paint for me, she's on a 2-week vacation, so I can't paint the hood and the trunk and the spot on the rear driver's side door. And then, because I don't want to sell a car that isn't 100%, I also decided in this episode to do a timing belt and water pump on it so that wasn't a worry for the next owner. So that also set me back a little bit, but mainly it's the paint lady. So unfortunately, it's going to take one more episode, I think, to get it all finished up, so we can get everything done, and then we can get a walk around and some nice shots of it, and then maybe some rolling footage as well, and then get it up for sale, and then move on to the next one. So I hope you guys like this one. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.